Let's be consistent.
Welcome to the Key to Consistency. I am your host, Rakeyia Collins, and on today's episode, we are going to be exploring the relationship between consistency and kindness. Guys, I am so excited to dive into today's topic because I know that we can all recognize that we need a lot more kindness in today's world. I've really thought through some examples and found some very interesting facts as I was diving deeper into kindness. And so hopefully you guys learned something from today's episode. I really want to show you guys that being kind is not just an act that you do for other people, but it's truly something that once you do consistently over and over again, it really begins to change your heart. And that's the beautiful thing. And that's really what we're after. So when we think about kindness, I want to start by just chatting through the power of consistent kindness, right? So we live in a world where, of course, there are 1,000 things that demand our attention. And it's so easy to underestimate the profound impact of being consistently kind. Whether you are leaving a restaurant and you just decide to open the door or leave the door open for the person that is coming behind you, or whether someone drops something and you help them pick it up, right? I know we're always on the go, in and out. We even have road rage because we are so fast trying to get to our destination, not really taking the time to slow down and think about our place in this world and how we can help make the world a better place. And being kind is one of those things that we can do to really help leave our mark on the world, right? And so when we think about it from a research lens, research has really shown that when kindness becomes a steadfast part of your character, it really creates a ripple effect, right? It not only touches the people in your home or the individuals that you come in contact with directly, but it also impacts entire communities because when you're kind to someone, it encourages them to pass it on, right? I'm sure that we've all seen the commercials where it's like kindness, pass it on. And you see, someone doing something for someone else that oftentimes doesn't look like them. Oftentimes they don't come from the same background, but they're just being kind, right? And so I truly believe that small gestures, when they are multiplied, can really lead to a positive change that expands and pushes past our wildest imaginations, right? Imagine if you became known as a kind human. Right. And what I mean by that is if you're the person who oftentimes has a routine, I think most humans, irrespective of what you do for a living, has a pretty solid routine. You may drive the same route to work. You may get up and make your coffee the same way. You buy the same coffee, go to the same grocery stores, go to the same gym, right? Like whatever your routine looks like, you probably encounter the same people day in and day out oftentimes, right? And so imagine if you go all the time to your local butcher shop or to your local farmer's market. And because you go there so regularly, you begin to see people all the time, right? And you make a habit of just, hey, how's your day? Being polite or giving them a compliment or just doing something kind, right? Because what that does, if you think about all of us, we're oftentimes all in our own little worlds. We're all just trying to hustle and again, make it through life. So if you do something to kind of break someone out of that mode by complimenting them or by helping them, it kind of makes them break out of their mode for a second and then want to do that same thing to someone else. But imagine if, because you become that person of kindness and you're visiting these same places consistently, people now, when they see you, automatically inside of them, they feel the impulse to be kind to you. They want to be around you because they know that you're full of kindness, you're full of life, you're full of energy, right? So I would encourage you to think about your own routine and think about how you can insert kindness into your routine and really become known as the person who is extremely kind, right? I found a study that was published in the Journey of Social Psychology, and it revealed that performing acts of kindness for 7 consecutive days led to a significant increase in participants' overall well-being. Right? So again, kindness is not just for you, it is for those around you as well. And so I would encourage you, if you think about your own well-being, and who doesn't want an increase in our well-being, right? Making sure that we exude and exhibit that kindness to those around us, that's huge, right? And I've already kind of touched on it a little bit, but I do want to dive deeper into the ripple effect of kindness, right? When you think about the ripple effect of kindness, it really is undeniable, right? When we choose to consistently be kind, we're creating a positive chain reaction that extends far beyond our immediate actions. Imagine if you do one simple thing, right? And you decide you're going to leave the door open for the person that's coming behind you as you're leaving the bank, right? So now that person is full of just happiness and joy and kindness, right? Because you held the door open for them. And so as they're walking to their car, they may see an elderly young woman and she may drop something, right? And they help her pick it up. So now the elderly woman who's walking into the bank is like full of kindness and love and joy. She's walking into the bank and she goes to the bank teller and she's like, wow, I really like your hair. Your hairstyle is really cute. And the teller, it's 5 p.m. She's had a very long day. She's like, wow, that's very nice of you, right? So the teller, because it's 5 p.m., she goes into her car and she's driving home and this car is trying to merge. And because the teller is so full of love and joy and kindness, she lets the car come through, right? Now, I know I made that up. You guys know I did on the spot, but just like that is truly an example of how kindness can just trickle into each other's lives and we have no idea. And all of this started because you decided, I'm going to hold the door open for the person at the bank that's literally walking right behind me. Right. And now that trickled down into possibly saving someone from having road rage and trying to force their way on the highway. We all know, especially if you live in a major city, that you sometimes have to work your way into lanes because people just don't want to let you in, even when your turn signal is on. And so that one act of kindness really trickled throughout the entire day. Right. And so again, although that was very made up, that was really to kind of help you guys see that kindness can really trickle beyond just what you've done. It's important when we think about kindness, something that example hopefully showed you guys is that kindness can inspire others to be kind as well, right? And it really creates a cycle of compassion that grows exponentially, right? And so I would encourage you as you go throughout your day to think about, when can I exert a little bit of extra kindness in my day, right? And just watch how it impacts your own mood and even the mood of other people around you, right? If let's say you may not necessarily leave your home like that and you work from home, what would it be? How much would it cost you just to send your manager an IM and say, I think you're doing a great job as a manager, right? Or if you don't feel that way about your manager, what if you feel that way about your colleague or your coworker? Like, I think when you submitted that report, it looks great. Like, you really show a lot of effort and a lot of energy at work, and it is very appreciative, right? Like, you're just a joy to work with, right? Like, how much would that cost you? And imagine what that does for that person today, right? Imagine what that ripple effect would then look like, because that person works from home and now they're in a much better mood, how that would impact their home, right? And now they're treating their kids well. Their kids are going off to, start their school day, and they're like, wow, mom's different this morning. So now the kids are going to school, and you guys know I'm not going to make up a whole other story again, but you guys can kind of see the ripple effect of kindness and how it is imperative that we interject more kindness in our day. So I would encourage you to just be conscious about, when is the next time I can add a little more kindness into my day? right? And so when we think about what kindness is really and kind of why does kindness even have this long lasting benefit? Like, what does kindness actually do, right? Well, kindness stimulates the production of oxytocin, otherwise known, of course, as the love hormone, right? And that's what leads to the reduced stress and increased emotional connection. And so that's why you can do one simple thing for someone else and literally have a reduction in your stress level, which is huge, of course, given in the times we live in. And of course, an increased emotional connection to just, even if it's you doing something kind for a stranger, it's the increased emotional connection of just humans, right? Like, it's rare nowadays to see someone do something for someone that they don't know and they're not getting anything from it. Right. And it just really helps strengthen our bonds and our belief, as people say, in mankind and in humanity, that there are still kind people out there. And so when you think about what that could look like, it could be very intentional. If you decide, what, I'm going to sign up to be a volunteer for a local community event. I'm going to give maybe to an organization on a consistent basis. I'm going to help struggling family members. Whatever you decide to do, understand that it's not about the magnitude. It's really about the repetition, as we talked about earlier. It can be these small, meaningful gestures that you do time and time again that really lead to and encourage kindness, and it kind of pushes you to be that person in your community to kind of start this whole train off, right? And so before we get into cultivating the habit of kindness and kind of what you can do to make sure it's on the top of your brain, I do want to encourage you to, again, think about, what can I do day by day to be more kind? Awesome, guys. So now we're going to get into, what does it actually look like to cultivate a habit of kindness, right? When we think about what that really looks like, it starts with self-awareness, right? It starts with making the decision to say, I'm going to consciously choose to be kind in a variety of situations, right? I'm going to intentionally incorporate kindness in my daily life, because it'll not only reshape my character, but it'll also help reshape the world that we inhabit, right? And so I would encourage you, when you think about being kind in various situations, that you may not want to start trying to incorporate kindness when you're angry. And I know that may sound counterintuitive, but because this is a consistency podcast, I do want to be honest and upfront. When you are angry, you are experiencing, as we talked about on our other Anchor podcast. And if you have not listened to that, go back a couple of episodes and listen to the podcast on anger. But when you are angry, you are experiencing a flood of other emotions. And kindness is not necessarily going to be top of mind, right? While I do encourage that ultimately you get to that point, it may be easier, because again, we're thinking long term and we want this to be a lifestyle for us. It may be easier for you to start cultivating kindness when you're not super angry, right? So whether it's just a random Tuesday and your spouse came home from work and you decided, well, I'm going to have a balloon for my spouse today, and I'm just going to say, today is your day. Right? Today from 5 until 9, today is just your day. I made your special dinner. I did whatever I wanted to, like, just being overly kind. Right? And again, that's just an example. Or if you want us to, just like leave them a card in the morning in the bathroom and just list out what you love about them and how you're grateful for them. Like, again, small acts of kindness, right? And you don't have to necessarily do those things as mentioned earlier. It can be something related to your community. It can be an event, but we're just trying to get in the habit of being kind. Now, the ultimate goal is for us to practice kindness so much that even when we're in those tense, angry moments and we don't really feel like practicing kindness, that we can still practice kindness. But I just don't want us to set ourselves up for failure by kind of jumping into the deep end and saying, okay, no, this isn't for me. Like, no, it is for you, and it's going to be for you because we're going to practice it in every single area of our life. And hopefully by doing that, it doesn't become just something that I'm doing. It becomes truly a part of your character and a part of who you are. Right. And so in order to hopefully get this, I'd say ingrained to that level, I would encourage you to start a kindness journal. And I know to some people it's like, this is cringy, but again, it's just one thing that you can do to keep track of what you've done that day. So in your kindness journal, write down one act of kindness that you performed and how it made you feel. Right. And I know that may sound so counterintuitive because it's like, well, am I doing it because I want to out the kindness of my heart, or am I doing it because I want to write down in my journal how it made me feel? And I will honestly tell you at the onset, it doesn't matter. Because the goal is to eventually outgrow this kindness journal to where you're being so kind, you don't have the time to consistently go into a journal and write it down, right? At the very beginning, you may need to write down, okay, I did X, Y, and Z today, and this is how I felt. And then the next day you say, okay, today I did this, and then this is how I felt, right? And you get to a point where things just become habit, right? It just becomes second nature to you. Oftentimes for most of us, when we get off of work and we come home, it's second nature to us to kick our shoes off and sit in front of the TV and turn the TV on. It's not even something we think about anymore. And that's where we want to get with this kindness journal. We want to get to the point where, yeah, we're doing it, and at first it's kind of cringeworthy, but we get to a point where I no longer even need to write it down because I live in a space of kindness. I don't want to say the word ecosystem because we're not an ecosystem, but my environment around me, if you know, I just exude kindness, right? And so that's ultimately something that we can take away from kind of cultivating a habit. It's easier to have a habit and build on a habit when you're consistently reminding yourself about that habit. And that's hopefully what the kindness journal will do for you guys. And when we've talked about how to build that habit of kindness. Kindness comes in a lot of different forms, right? And I've mentioned a couple of them, but it can be as simple as a smile. Right? It doesn't necessarily need to be you bending down and helping someone pick something up or holding open a door. Like, it doesn't necessarily need to be any of that. It can be a simple smile, or of course it can be things that are more significant as well. Whether you are choosing to just offer a listening ear to someone, that often I honestly will tell you is rare, because when you choose to actively listen to someone and not respond out of your own trauma, because oftentimes when we give advice, that's where we're speaking from, right? Our own personal experience with that particular issue, or what we would do if we were in that situation ourselves, right? Sometimes people don't need that. They just need someone to listen. And by offering a listening ear, that within and of itself is a form of kindness, right? Each small gesture, again, whether significantly large or a simple smile, can potentially brighten up someone else's day, right? It really, really can. And one thing I found that was very interesting about that is that neuroscientists have found that when you're performing acts of kindness, it activates our brain's reward system, and that leads to increased levels of happiness. And so, yes, while happiness is more personal, kindness is something that can be external. So if you want to look at it as a cycle to say, I'm being kind, and as a reward for my kindness, I get internally an increased level of happiness, right? And why is that important? Because just because you are being kind does not necessarily mean that that kindness is going to be thrown back at you. And that's why your own level of happiness increasing is important, because you should be able to live off of the fact that I am doing this, and the intrinsic benefit that you get from that should be enough. You shouldn't necessarily place the external expectation on someone else that, hey, because I did this for you, you do this for me, because then you get a letdown if they do not. Right. And so I would encourage you all, when we're thinking about being kind, that you focus on your increased levels of happiness that you're going to be receiving from doing the kind act. impact, right? And of course, there always are going to be challenges for us being kind. And as we strive to be more kind on a consistent basis, there are things like stress where you just don't feel like it. You're going through yourself. You could use some kindness from someone else to you. Of course, there are things like negativity where you could be in a toxic home or a toxic work environment and it's just not happening. You're like, yeah, Rakeyia, I hear you, but this just, not in my situation, right? Like those hurdles, I will tell you, they're not insurmountable, right? While I may not know your specific situation, I will say that by practicing consistent self-care, empathy with others, and maintaining a positive outlook, we can navigate challenges and try to stay true to our commitment to being kind, right? And that within and of itself may not be enough. Again, depending on your unique situation, you may need to go to a therapist. You may need to buy books, listen to audible books about how you can change your own mindset and not expect other people to reciprocate what you've been putting out into the world, if you will. There's so many layers to different challenges because we're all unique and we're all just trying to do our best to make it in this world. And I would encourage you to definitely explore those other avenues, but I would also encourage you to not give up. Like never give up. Anything that is worth having and worth pursuing, like this kindness journey, it is worth going through what you'll have to go through in order to ensure that you are being kind on a consistent basis. It is worth it. I would encourage you to get up in the morning and have a moment of mindfulness every morning just to set up your day and put your day on a positive note, right? So what does that actually look like? Well, that could look like when you get up in the morning, you may decide to say a prayer, or when you get up in the morning, you take a few deep, calming breaths. Like you just sit and you lay in your bed for a minute and you just breathe, right? You get up in the morning, you go look in the mirror, you say, girl, you look good. Or dude, I look good. Whichever one you are, right? Like you look in the mirror and you pump yourself up, even though your hair may look crazy, your breath may not smell the best. You may have a little crust going on around your eyes. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, guys. Why? Because you are practicing kindness. There's no one more important to practice kindness to than to yourself. Because of course, once you yourselves are full, it's nothing to give to someone else. And so, of course, I will say that we're not going to always have the capacity to be kind. We're not going to always be as kind as we should when we're on the job, when we're at home, when we're just out running errands. Self-compassion and self-forgiveness are going to be essential as we begin this journey of consistent kindness. While this podcast is a podcast that is going to be, of course, driving all of us to become more consistent humans, we have to recognize, as I think on most episodes, we recognize that there is going to be spaces where sometimes we miss the mark, right? And that's okay, right? It's okay to miss the mark because no one's perfect, but it's not okay to just quit and give up and say, I'm never, ever going to try that again. You have to keep going. Kindness. This is probably going to be my last fun fact that I want to throw in there before we wrap up today's episode. But kindness triggers the release of endorphins. And those are our body's natural painkillers. So that's just another reason why we should practice kindness consistently, because it ultimately improves our overall well-being. So as we kind of wrap things up today, I would encourage you guys to reflect on the incredible potential that being kind on a consistent basis actually holds, right? When we practice small intentional changes in our behavior, it can really create a world where compassion thrives and spreads. Kindness is not just an action and should not be looked upon as just an action. It really is a way of life. And it has the power to really shape the future that we live in. So I would encourage you guys to go on social media and share your acts of kindness and those positive outcomes that you've experienced on social media, and just use the hashtag, the key to consistency, just so we can see the fact that, hey, I'm out here and I'm being kind to those around me. right? And so, of course, before we end today's episode, I do want to end with a Bible verse. And today's verse comes from Ephesians chapter 4, verse 32. Be kind and compassionate to one another, forgiving each other, just as in Christ God forgave you. I think that verse speaks volumes and certainly speaks for itself. So remember, guys, consistency breeds mastery and transforms the ordinary into the extraordinary. Bye, guys. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of The Key to Consistency. Wherever you are listening to this podcast, it would mean everything to me if you could rate it, review it, reach out to me on Instagram. Would love your feedback, would love to hear anything you like, anything you don't like. Please feel free to share this episode with someone that you think could benefit from it. And until next time, bye guys.